Hello viewers, and welcome to another live-action commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today, I'm delighted to share with you another game sent in to me by Omega Sector Gaming. They're a gaming group based primarily out of the Pacific Northwest of the United States. They're a group of individuals located somewhat locally to myself, and I'm particularly pleased to have the honor of sharing this specific game with you, just because this represents my channel's debut of the tabletop version of our most recent to be released Chaos Faction Khorne Trait Warlord, Barzul the Hatebound. Currently under the employ of our player position to the right, a gentleman named Thomas Mellor, whom also happens to be holding our initiative token. At the opposite end of the table, having opted to play as our original Ork Faction Warlord Nazdreg, we have his opponent, Josh Fiske. And in assessing our opening layout of planets, planet number 1, always a bit of a wild card, is Karrnath. It affords its victor the choice of triggering the battle ability of any other planet on the tabletop. Planet number 2 is going to be Farron. It allows you to pick and choose a target non-warlord unit to be routed. Planet number 3 is going to be Boundless, the random card discard planet, whereas planet number 4 is going to be Taurus. Should you win a battle at that planet, should you control fewer units than does your opponent, it allows you the option of either picking up 3 resource tokens or grabbing the top 3 cards off the top of your deck and slotting those immediately into your hand. And last but not least, something critically important to consider, considering that we've got Barzul the Hatebound on the tabletop, planet number 5 is going to be Iridial the Healing Planet. And note, of course, that you're entirely eligible to target warlords with that ability. But we've already started to see a fair few deploy actions hit the table. Note, at planet number 5, our opening deploy action for our Chaos player, as if he could ask for anything better, is going to be a copy of the 2-cost unique attachment, Slaanesh's Temptation. For our Orc player, at any point he ends up deploying an army unit to anywhere other than the planet where Slaanesh's Temptation happens to be attached, he's going to be forced to pay a +1 resource cost premium. But also highly relevant to Orc resource cost, we've got a copy of the modified 4-cost unique Orc Lieutenant type unit from the core set, Crushface. He's got 2 command icons, 2 attack, 3 hit points, and he's got a special ability that happens to reduce the cost required to deploy an Orc faction army unit you control at his planet by 1. So between Slaanesh's Temptation, Josh is basically going to be paying the printed cost for any Orc unit he happens to deploy to planet number 1. And brand new as of Decree of Ruin, an army unit which I had the opportunity to spoil on this very channel, we've got a copy of the 1-cost Rickety War Buggy, a no war gear attachments vehicle trait unit, no command icons, but it's got 3 attack value, only 1 hit point, but it's our very first instance of the Goes Fasta specialization. Note that whenever our Orc player does not possess initiative, provided he has a unit at that same planet not named Rickety War Buggy, then the Rickety War Buggy cannot be dealt any damage whatsoever by units. And it looks as though Crushface has also happened to pick up a copy of Rocket Launcher, so he's gained that bit of war gear. He's now going to be able to attack during the range skirmish round, meaning that he's likely going to be able to attack prior to our Chaos player, despite not actually having the initiative token. Looks like as an action, we've got a copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm that's going to be killing off that copy of the Rickety War Buggy. And it's looking as though there's maybe actually a little bit of confusion. Note that the Rickety War Buggy is only immune to damage dealt out by units, not card effects. So a Rotten Plague Bears or Gleeful Plague Beast would not be able to kill off that 3/1 unit, but something like Tzeentch's Firestorm or Warp Storm, any number of other direct damage style card effects, are definitely eligible to end up killing off that unit. But regardless, on the opposite end of the table, Thomas's end, planet number 1, we happen to see a copy of Barzul's signature army unit. It is the Barzul's Cleavers. It's an incredible bit of statistics that you're paying for. It's only 3 cost. It's got 1 command icon, 2 attack value, and an incredible 5 hit points, which synergizes fantastically with our new Chaos Warlord himself. Looks as though both of our players are deciding where exactly to send their units. Note, we've got a copy of Promotion affixed to that Barzul's Cleavers at planet number 1. That's going to bring it up to a grand total of 3 command icons, and of course, 3 is a higher number than 2. Barzul, really the world is his oyster here. It looks like Barzul just has 2 units relative to our Orc faction players' 3, but it may or may not be a little bit difficult for our Orc to end up killing off that copy of Barzul's Cleavers, especially if Barzul himself shows up, and therefore it might be wise for Nazdreg to send himself to Taurus, unless he's got some sort of devious trick in order. Note, we've got a copy of an activated ammo depot sitting in our Orc player's HQ that afforded him a couple deploy stalls and an additional card draw, but looks as though Barzul himself, that Hail Warlord, is going to show up to planet number 1. 3 command icons, and a Warlord definitely beats the hell out of 0 command icons, and, well, 2 command icons and 0 Warlords. So, planet number 1 is going to be 1 card, 1 resource to the right for Barzul. Planet number 2, curious destination there for Nazdreg. That's going to be a couple of resources won by our Orc faction player, but note, Farron there is a little bit useless just because, you know what, like, let's say Barzul ends up winning or losing planet number 1, either the Barzul's Cleavers is going to be dead or retreated, and if it's in the HQ or if it's not on a planet, it's not going to do any good whatsoever to rout that unit. Perhaps our Orc player is just in dire need of resources, but let's see how combat's going to break down here. Definitely not a lot of economy units on the table, and I'm concerned about that Slaaneish's Temptation remaining in play being a big deal. But during the range skirmish round, Crushface takes a swing. He manages to deal 2 points of damage, well, decreased to 0 thanks to the timely discard of a Tzeentch's Firestorm. Looks like we see 2 points of damage dealt to the Barzul's Cleavers, subsequently moved to Barzul the Hatebound, considering it survived, and I can only imagine that as it's able to kill off Crushface in one single swing, that must have been Barzul's Cleavers using its ability as an action to give it an ephemeral +2 attack value boost, which persists only for its next individual attack. Barzul himself is currently sitting at 2 damage. He's a 0/5 Warlord. His ability is that when a unit you control takes damage, not is assigned, but successfully lives through taking damage, then you're able to shift that damage to your Warlord. Looks as though regardless of the Rickety War Buggy's target, we see another copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm discarded. That's going to be Barzul taking a single point of damage, whether he was the target, whether the Barzul's Cleavers were the target, and that means that we come to the end of a combat round. Our Warlord and our signature army unit are going to ready that Rickety War Buggy retreats from the planet because it's now entirely exposed to being killed off by units. And now what exactly are we going to see in regard to planetary abilities? Looks like that's going to be Iridial activated. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that move or not. Something very difficult to keep in mind regarding Barzul the Hatebound is that you have to very much pace when exactly you decide to get him bloodied. He's a 0/5 when hailed, but he is an incredible 3/11 when bloodied. But the problem, particularly facing an Orc like Nazdreg, who can confer the brutal keyword to any of his units, if you've just got your Warlord sitting there bogged down in battle, if you can conjure up monumental values of attack power, if you can manage to kill that Chaos Warlord, then that completely sucks. Or, you know, on the flip side, conversely, if he shows up at some big important battle and he's just a 0/5 chump, not actually able to contribute, then that totally sucks for you. So it's definitely a careful matter of timing in regard to when exactly you want your Warlord to be bloodied, and it looks as though Thomas at least probably bought himself another turn, but if he keeps doing that first planet bully thing, certainly Barzul can act as a fantastic HP reservoir for that copy of Barzul's Cleavers. But in catching up with our game state, we've passed an HQ phase that's going to be 4 resources, 2 cards for each player. Note that the initiative token is now passed over to the left for our Nazdreg player. He put out a copy, very curious curious deck indeed that he is playing. It's a copy of his army unit specific resource cost reduction support, the Big Tooth Banner, a unique card. Each and every time, well, the first time you play an orc, you can exhaust that support to decrease its cost by 1, but if you leave that Slaanesh's Temptation there, saving all the resources in the world doesn't help you quite so much as it would, because you're paying that +1 resource premium for each and every individual orc army unit. And speaking of orcs, now located at planet number 1 on the right side of the table, we've got a copy of the 2-cost, 1 command, 2 attack, 2 hit point, Evil Sunz Warbiker, one of those Warlord friend units. It's going to get a +2 attack value bonus, provided that you've got your Warlord also chilling at that planet alongside it, or the enemy Warlord has decided to make him or herself present. And the Evil Sunz Warbiker is kind of a tricky unit. It's only got 2 hit points, but provided that you can make it survive 1 attack, Barzul can pull 1 point of damage off of that unit. So if your enemy attacks for 3, you could discard a copy of Doom Siren or some, super commonly played card like that to just have it take 1 point of damage and then drop that onto Barzul. And considering that Barzul moves all damage from 1 unit onto him, like if your cleavers take a swing of 4, even if Barzul only has 1 hit point remaining, you'll nevertheless be able to pull off all of that damage. But couple additional plays here. Promise of Glory to the right. That's going to be a 0-cost event, which generates 2 cultist tokens. Perhaps we'll see some demons being put into play by Thomas. Looks as though those are fresh out of that little Ziploc baggie. And we've got an enraged orc strategically positioned at planet number 2. 2-cost, 0/5, intrinsic brutal keyword unit with 1 command icon. And that's pretty fantastic just because it's got such an incredible HP reservoir that it can swing back with brutal, and that's yet another unit that really rewards the orc as a player, as a faction, as a Warlord Nazdreg in particular, for acting second. But in assessing our game state here, we've got 1 red, 1 blue icon under Thomas's possession. If he wins at planet number 1 and 3, that's going to be the game for him. So at the moment, maybe who gives a shit about that enraged orc sitting at planet number 2? I think it just picked up a copy of Rocket Launcher. Unfortunately, Josh concealed the art from us, that devious fellow, but I do believe that's going to pick up the ranged keyword, and there is nothing more dangerous than a 0 attack value unit with the ranged keyword. In any case, we've now got a copy of Barzul's Cleavers positioned at planet number 3, the victory condition for our Chaos player. Again, note that Enraged Orc was paid for at a premium, despite the assistance of that Big Tooth Banner. Looks as though a little bit of a deploy stall. That's going to be that Ammo Depot, adding an additional card to our Orc player. Looks as though he's probably got a copy of Battle Cry there in his hand. You play it. After the onset of a battle, each orc unit you control at that battle kind of takes a little bit of a snapshot the instant you play it. Each of those units ends up getting a +2 attack bonus that persists until the very end, I believe, of the battle as opposed to the phase. But looks as though both of our players are going to decide where exactly to send their warlords. If I had to bet my life on it, I would say Barzul's going to show up at planet number 1, do his bullying thing there. And then Nazdreg is going to be showing up with that rickety war buggy, but where exactly would he want to go? Boundless is going to be tempting to do that random card discard, pick up a couple of cards, but I could also see him showing up at Taurus. His unit count is alarmingly low. It's just sitting at 3 relative to our Chaos player. Looks like he's got 6, considering he didn't actually pay for any demons. So I would say Nazdreg, show up at Taurus, kill off that copy of Barzul's Cleavers while you can. All right, looks like I was wrong. Perhaps he's instead opting to get rid of that copy of Slaanesh's Temptation, which, in hindsight is probably a perfectly reasonable play. For anyone thinking about if I get advice wrong or anything like that, keep in mind I don't preview these videos prior to commentating them, and I'm very much doing a live stream of consciousness, speaking as quickly as I can, so I apologize for some suboptimal strategy. In a real game situation, I'd take ever so slightly longer prior to making my commitments decision. But planet number 1 is going to be a couple of resources to the right, thanks to that 1 icon associated with that Evil Sunz Warbiker. Planet number 2, thanks to the presence of Barzul, is going to be a couple of cards won by our Chaos faction player. Note that Enraged Orc is going to be able, well, it's going to have to attack early. It's not really, there's no point to it having ranged if it's going to shoot for 0. Barzul takes a swing at it for 0, then Barzul can attack again for 0, then the cleavers could attack for 2 or 4, and then both of those copies of Cultist token could also attack and then end up killing off that copy of Enraged Orc, and we're going to see a random card discard. So that's a pretty reasonable move on behalf of Thomas, and pursuing the random card discard associated with Boundless is absolutely fantastic, and I suppose being a little bit flexible in regard to victory condition is also cool with me. So if you want to clear the board of your enemy economy units, if you want to just, starve everything, that is absolutely fine. Looks like we've got a copy of the signature event, Blood for the Blood God, being played at planet number 4. That's going to be 1 point of damage to each unwounded enemy unit, and it looks as though, is that going to be another slight misplay on behalf of our players? So I guess earlier they were maybe convinced that Tzeentch's Firestorm wouldn't be able to damage that unit, but of course, Blood for the Blood God is going to be quite adroit at managing to banish that rickety war buggy to the depths of the discard pile. So it's going to be killed outright, but Nazdreg is going to remain positioned at that planet. He's going to be able to get rid of that copy of Slaaneish's Temptation. I'm not exactly sure if I agree with the use of that Blood for the Blood God at this point, just because if that rickety war buggy is going to be sitting at Iridial, there's not really any point to getting rid of it. It doesn't possess any command icons unless it happens to be promoted, so I don't really see any intrinsic harm in letting it sit there. It might have been much better to save that signature event for when you can derive the most benefit, whether you've got your own brutal units, whether there's a large number of orc units or neutral units that you can potentially kill off. But regardless, planet number 1, that's going to be Farron, captured. Looks like for one of the first times in my life, Farron's ability is not actually being routed. During the ranged skirmish round, during the battle at planet number 2, the Enraged Orc is going to take a shot at something for 0. Barzul swings for 0, Clash of the Titans right here. We come to the end of a combat round. Will the Enraged Orc run away or not? It's going to be Barzul's opportunity to attack first. I can only imagine that Barzul is going to be taking a swing unless we see that Enraged Orc retreat away from the planet. Looks like we're going to see a couple of points of damage dealt out to that copy of Barzul's Cleavers, and I wish we were seeing maybe a slightly different order for attacks here, but that's going to be a swing of 4 going out to that Enraged Orc. If it takes 4 points of damage, it's going to be able to attack in response for 4. I don't know. I think if it were me, I'd have just opted to swing for, a paltry 0 with my Warlord, but looks as though at some point we saw a 1 shield icon card, perhaps used or otherwise, that's a couple damage tokens stacked, so that Enraged Orc is either swinging for 4 or for 3, but let's find out. We saw a copy of Slaaneish's Temptation discarded as shields. Note, Barzul took the hit for that 2 damage that the Cleavers dealt themselves, and that indeed must have been a swing for 4 from the Enraged Orc dealt out to Barzul's Cleavers, or Barzul, again, it doesn't matter, Slaaneish's Temptation dropped that to 2. The Enraged Orc ends up being killed off by that Cultist token, so I very much hope it was worth, keeping that Enraged Orc around, but regardless, looks like Barzul's going to end up winning that planet. He's going to be dropping off his Cleavers. Those 2 Cultist tokens are still going to be sitting at that planet, and looks like that random card discard, very unconventional card there, that's going to be the rather community-maligned Attack Squig Herd. There is nothing wrong with a 4/6 unit, but what do orcs lack? The answer is command icons. What does the Attack Squig Herd have an entire dearth of? It's going to be command icons. So, why just force yourself to have a ridiculous amount of weakness? That Slaaneish's Temptation is going to be destroyed. Iridial is activated. Nazdreg clears himself of 1 damage token. And now that copy of Barzul's Cleavers is going to be nicely positioned at our new first planet to do another random card discard. It's potentially going to be able to gain a couple of cards during the command phase. Our new 5th planet, the last planet of the game, is going to be Eloith. Note, last turn we had our new planet be Yavarn, a planet where if you activate its ability, both players are forced to take an army unit from their hand, put it into play directly into their HQ, only to be arriving at a planet alongside your Warlord the following round, exhausted, unless you do something cheeky like a, orcish teleportapad or something along those lines. Oh, doesn't that just suck? That's a brand new copy of Slaaneish's Temptation. Looks like our player to the left flips the bird to our player to the right, and That means that each and every time he plays a unit to anywhere but planet number 5, which of course is wildly outside of Thomas's victory condition, then that is going to result in him having to pay that +1 resource, pay that +1 resource cost required to purchase a unit. So, looks like Thomas is very nicely positioned at planet number 1. That random card discard and card bonus is looking to be his. Nazdreg really can't do much by himself. Thomas is also positioned reasonably well at his victory condition planet. He's got a copy of that 2/5 cleaver, and each individual copy of the cleavers is going to be able to attack for a possible 4. That Evil Sun's Warbiker is going to be showing up with Barzul. As soon as a Warlord is sitting at its planet, as soon as it has an opportunity to attack, it's going to be able to attack for 4 as well. So it's looking to be just an absolute mountain of damage that our Barzul player is going to be able to conjure up here. And then on the opposite end of the table, really all that Nazdreg has going for him, he has no units on the board. He's got that Slaanesh Temptation working against him. He's got an ammo depot. He's got that big tooth Banna. But God, just taking a look at his hand, it looks as though there's kind of a lot of events and attachments, and this is kind of a janky, unconventional orc deck is my understanding in the first place, and it looks as though all these disparate pieces really aren't necessarily functioning too terribly well together. So that's going to be a copy of the Weird Boy Maniac, played for 3, thanks to the assistance of the Big Tooth Banna in the context of Slaanesh's Temptation. The Weird Boy Maniac is going to show up at that planet like a wrecking ball. It's going to be 1 command icon, 2 attack, 4 hit points, and deals 1 point of damage to each other unit present at that planet. Looks as though we see 1 cultist token outright just blown apart, and then we see a Warp Storm discarded to preserve the life of that other cultist token, and then the Barzul's Cleaver itself ends up taking a single point of damage. Looks like a cultist token is disappearing. What exactly does that mean? It means a Cornate Demon. That's going to be a copy of the Vicious Bloodletter positioned at planet number 2. Unfortunately for Barzul, he's not actually going to be holding the initiative token once we see our following game round, and that's going to be, you know, the decisive battle where he doesn't have the initiative, but he has an area effect 3 units, so our orc player had better hope to high hell that he's got a copy of Squigify in his hand, or he's otherwise just got some convenient way of dealing with that big nasty chaos demon. But Nazdreg, if he shows up at planet number 1, he might be able to kill off that copy of Barzul's Cleavers. I think a lot of it depends on where exactly Barzul goes. I wouldn't be surprised to see Barzul show up at planet number 1 just to ensure that he can get that 2-card bonus. I was also going to say I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see Barzul show up at planet number 2 just to drop off that copy of Evil Sun's Warbikers so that it's going to be ready during the following round so that it can attack for that ideal 4. But I think if it were me, I would really have sent Barzul to planet number 1 just so if nothing else I could ensure that my Warlord would be bloodied so he could show up at that final battle at Taurus to be able to transform into a 311 badass to, you know, kick all kinds of ass, chew all kinds of gum, and show off those cornate balls of steel. But looks like Nazdreg shows up at planet number 5 trying to banish that Slaanesh's Temptation from the Traxxas sector. Planet number 1, 3 command icons to the right, beats the hell out of 1 command icon to the left, and that is going to be 2 cards to the right for Thomas. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource for Thomas, and planet number 5 is going to be a couple of cards for Nazdreg, and it's going to allow him the opportunity to trigger Elois battle ability, which might, just might, allow him the opportunity to take a peek at the top 3 cards of his deck, find something game-saving, add that to his hand, and then subsequently play that business in order to outright, you know, curb stomp Barzul. But let's see how combat's going to break down. The initiative token is in Thomas's hand. He swings for 2 with his Barzul's Cleavers, deals out a couple of points of damage to that copy of the Weird Boy Maniac. The Weird Boy Maniac itself is going to take a swing. It's going to be threatening to deal out 2 points of damage. The damage is assigned. Are we going to see an intervening shield? The answer is no. Are both of our players going to stay at that planet? I can only imagine that the answer is yes. So what is it going to be? Both players stay. It's going to be Barzul's Cleaver's opportunity to attack first. If they deal themselves 2 points of damage, note that that is a cost, and it therefore cannot be shielded, and fortunately our players do not make such a transgression as to make that mistake. Weird Boy Maniac turns tail and runs, and that's going to be a random card discarded from Josh's hand. What exactly is it going to be? It's going to be a copy of Attack Squig Herd, which is probably not something that would have been, relevant to altering the trajectory of this game. So planet number 1 is gone. That's going to be that Barzul's Cleavers with the promotion bouncing into the HQ. 3 command icons doesn't do you a whole lot of good when you're showing up exhausted. Poor Taurus isn't going to be activated this entire game, something in my heart tells me, and it's looking like it's not going to be activated anytime soon either. Well, I guess you could activate it, you just can't derive the benefit, but Nazdreg ends up banishing that Slaaneash's Temptation. He gets rid of that. He doesn't end up fighting anything, but we're going to have the opportunity here. It's Burnaboys, and it looks like Enraged Orc and Made to Fight. So Burnaboys is a 5/3 as a reaction, I believe, to their being declared an attacker or dealing damage. My memory fails me at the moment. You deal an enemy unit a single point of damage, so it's a nice little split effect. It's great, therefore, with Zarather. The more instances of damage, the better, and it's also great when you're facing swarms of units, but Barzul's Cleavers with 5 HP, pretty resilient to individual instances of damage, and even that Vicious Bloodletter itself is a 4/4, so that's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Made to Fight, pretty interesting play. Enraged Orc probably isn't great. Made to Fight is really only worthwhile if you've got a decent unit. I can't quite tell what exactly our Orc player is going to be adding to his hand. I am pretty good at that Vegas egg game, but it seems like I missed what he added to his hand there. But Made to Fight, if you've got a unit that leaves play at the same planet as your Warlord, you can basically deal damage equal to its printed attack value to whatever target enemy, I believe, non-Warlord unit you would like. So it's fantastic with, say, Goff Knob, Ramshackle Truck, but, I'm not seeing any targets on the battlefield right now. All I'm seeing is a copy of an exhausted Weird Boy Maniac that's going to be showing up at planet number 1, only to be absolutely obliterated. Looks like that was a copy of Enraged Orc and Cyborg Body that our Orc player drew. I feel like a little bit of a voyeur peeking into his hand there, but Cyborg Body is going to be the signature attachment for Nazdreg. You affix it to the army unit of your choice. You basically double its printed HP, and note that doubling effects always occur after multiplicative effects always occur after additive or subtractive ones. So our Orc player, it looks like he's got 7 resources. On the opposite end of the table, Thomas himself is sitting on 7 resources. What is Barzul going to do to guarantee his victory? What is our Orc player going to do to guarantee his victory? Certainly a copy of Crush Face would be monumentally useful in a situation like this, but Enraged Orc, not exactly Crush Face. Here's what could happen. Barzul could show up that planet. Note that Nazdreg is going to be the player with initiative. Nazdreg could take a swing at something, deal out a couple points of damage. Barzul could either be shielded or just let that damage go through. Then Barzul could attack the Enraged Orc for 0. Then the Enraged Orc itself attacks. Then those 2 Vicious Bloodletters just rain all kinds of area effect down. They're going to make it rain in the Traxxas Sector nightclub, and it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. So if things didn't already look bad for our Orc player, they're starting to look outright insurmountable. We've now got 2 area effect 3 units located at that same planet. And let's see if there's absolutely anything else our Orc can do to try to survive this relentless onslaught. He's got a copy of Battle Cry in his hand, which would certainly be nice. The Weird Boy Maniac, the Enraged Orc, and of course Nazdreg himself would all stand to get a +2 attack value bonus. That's going to be a copy of Weird Boy Maniac. Definitely a decent time to play that card. That's going to be 1 point of damage dealt out to each other individual unit at that planet. The Enraged Orc takes a point of damage, so now it's got 1 attack value, and each and every one of those individual enemy army units takes a point of damage as well. So those Vicious Bloodletters have 3 hit points remaining. The Barzul's Cleavers has got 4 HP remaining, but it's still totally eligible to attack for 4 thanks to its action, and Then the Evil Sun's Warbiker is going to be able to attack for 4 as well, presuming that one of our 2 warlords shows up, because that would be a little foolhardy not to do that. But, you know, let's see what exactly happens. Barzul's at least going to be able to show up and tank one big hit for any one of these army units. Even that Enraged Orc swinging for 4, Barzul at 1 hit point is going to be able to survive that swing there. So let's kind of see how things end up being resolved. One of our last few resources on our Chaos players side of the table is going to be that copy of Rogue Trader positioned at planet number 5. That's potentially going to be 2 cards and 1 resource unless our Orc player is going to be able to do anything about it. And even though we've seen a couple copies of Tzeentch's Firestorm, a couple copies of Slaaneish's Temptation, I would imagine that there's at least still 2 value shield cards in our Chaos player's deck. He's still got his copy of, the Butcher's Nails, his signature attachment. It's a little bit late to draw your signature support, but, I guess the signature event really isn't going to be too tremendously useful either. If he were to draw a copy of Blood for the Blood God, he could certainly play it if he doesn't want to hold on to it as shields, but it would only have the ability of dealing 1 point of damage to that Weird Boy Maniac and to Nazdreg. And not exactly the best card to see right now. That's a Mechaniac Repair Crew, so for the cost of 3, it's got a command icon, it's got 2 attack value, it's got 3 hit points, and get this, you can exhaust it to ready one of your Orc faction support cards, then you deal it a single point of damage. But what exactly do you want to ready? You've got your ammo depot, and that's not going to make enough of a difference. There's no Orc cannon. There's no ridiculous thing there. I can't quite tell if that Mechaniac Repair Crew is put into play at planet number 1 or not. Looks like we do see the Mechaniac Repair Crew used to trigger an ammo depot, and we're continuing to, let's see here. The Big Tooth Banna is perhaps attempting to be used to play that copy of Cyborg Body. I believe that it's only, army units that can reduce the cost of. So a little bit of a mistake there, but I'm sure our players are going to rectify that transgression in just one moment. And unfortunately, then, that was ever so slightly suboptimal, and of course, that's being a little bit generous, but that Mechaniac Repair Crew dealing itself damage just to ready the Big Tooth Banna, or did it ready the ammo depot? I guess regardless, I don't know if that was necessarily the best use of exhausting a 2-3 unit, but let's kind of see how combat ends up breaking down. We've now got a Rogue Trader also positioned at planet number 3 for our Chaos faction player. I believe that Mechaniac Repair Crew is indeed deployed to planet number 1, and if it were deployed at planet number 2, it would be doing absolutely nothing in regard to tying up a command struggle if it's exhausted, and therefore it does not count its command icon. But looks as though both of our players are perhaps deciding where exactly to send their warlords. Spoiler alert, it's bound to be planet number 1 for both of these players unless Barzul decides to do something absolutely ridiculous, but why take any risks considering you've got Barzul who can absorb an attack, considering you've got a copy of that, still 2 attack value Barzul's Cleavers. Nazdreg shows up at that planet. Nazdreg's got a total of 2 command icons relative to the 1, 2, 3, 4 command icons of our Chaos player. That's going to be 1 card, 1 resource to the right for Barzul. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource for Barzul. And wouldn't you know it, planet number 4 is going to be a couple of cards and 1 resource for Barzul. Rogue Traders paying for themselves, at least in the form of resources. Not quite making up that card yet. I guess that's not fair to say. Between the two of them, they're earning a total of 3 cards, so doing work, Rogue Traders. Keep being you. Don't ever change. Don't let Tzeentch talk nonsense to you. But we've got combat about to break out. There are no ranged units. The initiative token is in Nazdreg's possession. Each and every Orc unit present at that planet benefits from the brutal keyword. Looks like we've got a copy of Barzul's Cleavers taking a couple points of damage, but I'm not sure why exactly. Unless our initiative token erroneously did not change hands, Okay, looks like Barzul takes that damage, so he's going to be bloodied. He's, of course, knocked away from that planet, so he's going to be exhausted and placed in Thomas's HQ, even though he's not actually exhausted on the tabletop. It's not going to make much of a difference. And that copy of Barzul's Cleavers is going to be able to attack for 4 during its next attack. And let's see here, it should be Nazdreg's opportunity to attack first, and therefore that was kind of an interesting play having Barzul take that damage now, but of course that Barzul's Cleaver's bonus will persist, and this would be a fantastic opportunity to use something like Archon's Terror or Inquisitorial Fortress to get rid of that copy of Barzul's Cleavers, but unfortunately, much to the chagrin of Orc players everywhere, they have no such combat trick. So that copy of Weird Boy Maniac takes a swing of 2 at that copy of Bars. Okay, no, actually, it takes a swing at that Evil Sun's Warbiker. So well done. That's going to be a 4/1 unit killed. And that's going to be the Vicious Bloodletter doing area effect 3. So going to make it rain. Let's see which of our Orc units can survive the exsanguination afforded to them, doted onto them, gifted upon them by the Vicious Bloodletter. That's going to be 3 points of damage to the Weird Boy Maniac. It's now going to be attacking for 5. That's going to be 3 points of damage to that Enraged Orc. That's now going to be attacking for 4. This would be a very good time for some direct damage chaos stuff to come into play and kill off that Enraged Orc prior to it being able to swing for 4 and potentially kill the remaining Vicious Bloodletter. And then let's see if that Mechaniac Repair Crew dies. Let's see if the Weird Boy Maniac dies. And then let's see if Nazdreg himself dies. Note that that copy of Ammo Depot, which I believe is the support that the Mechaniac Repair Crew readied, it might be rather valuable in affording our Orc player the opportunity to draw some additional shield cards. And note that he's got that copy of Cyborg Body sitting unplayed in his hand. And indeed, we see it discarded. That's going to preserve that copy of the Weird Boy Maniac, but the Mechaniac Repair Crew doing absolutely nothing. I think there's a reason why players almost never use that card. It's going to be outright destroyed by the Devastation wrought by that Area Effect 3 keyword, and the Enraged Orc is going to take a swing. It is a damn shame that we do not have a Zinch's Firestorm, which could have interjected, and that is going to be a dead Vicious Bloodletter. Damn it, Thomas. If you have the opportunity to play a Vicious Bloodletter, at least keep the bastards alive long enough to do a double area effect volley. Oh well, but Barzul's Cleavers are going to be attacking for a total of 4. That's going to be Battlecry discarded as shields, so that's going to be a total of 5 damage placed upon Nazdreg thanks to AE3, thanks to that swing that was dropped down to 2, and then this is going to be Nazdreg himself swinging for 2 at, I believe, that still remaining copy of Barzul's Cleavers. And man, oh man, it's looking like this could actually end up being lost for our Orc player. For our Chaos player if he's not careful. Because the Vicious Bloodletter that Barzul's Cleavers, it's going to have a little bit of difficulty trying to overcome all of this opposition at the end of the... Oh my god, at the end of the combat round, these units stay... That's going to be the Vicious Bloodletter killed, and then the Barzul's Cleavers is going to be taking a swing of 2, but what exactly are they going to be attacking? What are they trying to kill off? I thought this was going to be an absolute shoo-in for our Chaos faction player at this planet, but it's looking as though he's going to have victory completely stolen from him, so wow, this is definitely an unexpected turn of events, and that is looking like it's going to be an absolute nightmare. So the Barzul's Cleavers failed to kill whatever it was trying to kill based on the discard of that Lucky Warpaint attachment. And now it's going to be up to our Chaos faction player to try and take this next planet. If he can manage to capture Iridial, then that is going to be the game to him. But until then, he's not going to be able to do it. So we see that copy of Ammo Depot activate. That's going to be +1 card for our Orc faction player. And man, oh man, I cannot get over how I thought that was going to be an absolute shoo-in for our Chaos faction player, but Thomas, unfortunately, my dear friend, it looks as though you've shit the bed at that planet, and now let's see if you can come back and try to win at Iridial, or if Nazdreg is going to stomp you and maintain Barzul's 0% win rate on this channel. Oh man, but we see another HQ phase. That's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for each of our players. Taurus is going to be captured to the left by Josh, but of course it's going to be 1 red, 1 green icon. That's going to be insufficient for him to win the game, but it's definitely going to be adequate in preventing Thomas from claiming victory over the Traxxas sector. Thomas now picks up the initiative token, and it's going to be his job now to try to salvage this game. So what exactly can he do? He plays a Promise of Glory. That's going to be 2 additional cultists. Does he have a 3rd Vicious Bloodletter in hand? He's got a total of 6 resources. Does he have it? Can he do it? What is he going to do to augment Barzul at this just critical planet? Man, that completely sucks for our Chaos player, but what exactly is our Orc going to do to try to win at this planet? It looks like he's got 4 resources. Maybe he's got a couple of Snakebite Thugs. That would be just an absolute nightmare put into play to try to best our Chaos player here. That's going to be a copy of Shoot 'em Mob deployed to planet number 1. I've definitely seen worse. 2 attack value for 1 resource, definitely not bad. Unfortunately, we do not have the initiative token in the possession of our Orc faction player, and that is a very susceptible unit. But definitely Blood for the Blood God isn't going to be doing much work when you've got so many severely, just egregiously damaged Orc units. And they're all going to be showing up exhausted with that brutal keyword, so it's going to be up to Thomas to just absolutely tear those units apart prior to their, just doing the same to him. Barzul may be a 311 unit, but that Enraged Orc is attacking for 4. The Weird Boy Maniac is attacking for 5 or 4, depending on what copy you're looking at. Nazdreg himself is going to be able to attack for 2. All of that could just be an absolute nightmare, and maybe we'll end up seeing a copy of Battlecry played. Who knows? But it could certainly spell certain doom for our Chaos player. Note, we've got a copy of Orc Cannon being put into play. It's a 1-cost support. You exhaust it as a combat action. Both players deal 1 indirect damage to each unit they've got located at that planet. I can only imagine that's going to be the Rogue Trader, and then something, probably some Orc unit like that Weird Boy Maniac that still has, well, I guess it's hard to tell if the damage tokens are stacked or not on that currently in the ready position Orc. But let us see what happens. That's going to be a copy of the Gleeful Plague Beast positioned at planet number 1. And that is definitely going to be something favorable for Thomas to see. That's a 3/5 unit with a command icon, I think a couple command icons, and as soon as the combat phase erupts, that's going to be 1 single solitary point of damage dealt out to each and every present enemy unit. Looks as though our players did a little bit of video editing themselves for this match, of which I'm much, highly appreciative, and I guess let's see how things are going to be resolved from here on out. So, our initiative token is going to be in possession of our Chaos player. That Gleeful Plague Beast is going to potentially kill off the Enraged Orc, 1 or 2 copies of the Weird Boy Maniac, and potentially that copy of Shoot 'em Mob. So absolutely no idea what's in our Chaos player's hand, unfortunately. He's quite kind of at an angle that doesn't really lend itself to the camera spying upon his hand. And our Orc player, it's a little bit difficult to discern what the contents of his hand are based on the art, and his predilection for kind of concealing that from the camera here. So we're quickly running out of options for committing Warlords to. The battle ability is entirely irrelevant at this point. We've got an Evil Sun's Warbiker now played to planet number 1. That is going to be an absolutely clutch card. It's potentially going to be able to attack for 4. It's going to be able to survive the Gleeful Plague Beast. I almost said Evil Plague Beast, which, is fair. It's not an inaccurate descriptor of the creature. Note, we've got a custom field generator controlled by our Orc player, so whenever you happen to suffer an attack, you can basically prevent that attack, redistribute that damage as indirect damage among all the different Orc faction units you control. They're definitely fantastic ways to abuse that effect. Like if you were to, I'll go into an example as it presents itself. But note, planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource. 1, thanks to Barzul and his rogue trader, all those dudes. Planet number 2 is going to be a push, just no contest by either player. And planet number 3, hopefully we saw some shield cards or some events or something for our Chaos faction player. That's going to be a couple of cards and 1 resource for Thomas. Our combat round must be ongoing because that rogue trader is going to be outright obliterated. The Gleeful Plague Beast damages itself, the Evil Sun's Warbiker, and Barzul himself. He's now got 10 hit points remaining. The Shoot-a-Mob is going to be outright obliterated. That's for you, Justin. And let's see here. So, Shoot-a-Mob is going to be killed, or are we going to be shielding it? Looks like we see some damage shifting from one Weird Boy Maniac to another. I'm not exactly sure if that makes any difference or what the rationale behind that is. I think, judging by the artwork, that's our seldom seen Made to Fight, and that's going to be the Shoot-a-Mob, where when it leaves play, when it's at the same planet as is your Warlord, it's going to afford you the opportunity to deal damage equal to its printed attack value to the enemy, I believe, army unit of your choice, and it looks as though that's going to be that Chaos Elite, the Gleeful Plague Beast. Just something of critical importance to keep in mind is that it's printed attack value and not modified attack value. So even though interrupts, and I believe Made to Fight is indeed an interrupt, that's going to, like the Enraged Orc, would deal 0 damage as opposed to 4 because it's printed as opposed to current. Looks as though we've got a copy of Butcher's Nails being discarded as shields, and looks like Nazdreg ended up bloodied, and we see a dead copy of Weird Boy Maniac, thanks to an Orc cannon, and that is going to be another dead copy of a Weird Boy Maniac. And I guess with the bloodied Nazdreg, that was a very unconventional end to the battle, but I guess that's going to be a GG. Looks as though Nazdreg has kind of accepted the inevitable. That is going to be a victory to Thomas Mellor, so thank you to Thomas for sending in this footage in the first place on behalf of Omega Sector Gaming. Very well played match by both of our players, so congratulations to Thomas. Thank you to Josh Fiske for participating, and of course, thank you as always as the viewer for checking out another one of the Hive Tyrant videos. But as always, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, as ever, you're always encouraged to share this content, because the more engagement these videos receive, the more individuals there are that may stumble upon Conquest. They may give this living card game a try, enjoy what they experience, join our community, and of course, all the greater we are in number, all the bigger message we stand to send to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you'd ever like to support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored were you to make a donation or contribution on a strictly monthly basis to my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.